Good evening and welcome to What's Your Story. My guest tonight is Mr. Greg Dwyer. Mr. Dwyer is a motivational speaker. He is also a Lutheran minister and a former magician. Please sit back tonight, relax, and watch this story unfold. I guarantee you, you will enjoy every minute of it. This is part 2 of a 2-part series. Greg, let's keep on going, buddy. What do you think?
I think it's wonderful. Let's go.
Let's do it. Greg, there's literacy, but then there's the ability to read people. How do you teach someone to read other people?
I think we do it all the time. You know, you walk into a room and you size people up. Some people think it's a psychic power, but I think every single one of us has the ability to tap into that ability to be able to read somebody. And I think, here's what the key is. I think the key is to get rid of all of the noise so that you can tap into another person's energy. And I think a lot of it has to do with the subconscious mind, connecting and saying, there's something going on here. Maybe they lost a loved one, or maybe they're upset, but you can feel it if you focus on it. And most of us are so scattered that we don't take it all in. And so that, I think, really is the key, because we're always reading people.
We're always doing it?
I think we are, whether we know it or not. Well, here's the key. We can't take in all information. We take in only a few bits of information at a time.
Yes.
So if we're thinking about dinner, or what happened yesterday, or we're thinking about sports, or we're thinking about something we heard on the news, right? And we walk into a room, we meet somebody, because our hard drive in our brain is taken up with all of those things, we really don't focus on the person that's right in front of us. So I think it requires the discipline to be present. And most of us don't do that. But once you're present with someone, you can pick up signals that are microscopic that most people will miss. And that's the key. It's almost like a discipline.
Wow.
Yeah.
Now, are some people more difficult to read than others, even if you're in the moment and in tune with them?
Yeah, certainly people can have a poker face, or they could hide. But even then, they're communicating. Now, here's the key. We're always communicating, even when we're not talking. So when someone's not saying something, or they have a poker face, they're still communicating through their body language. We're always communicating all the time.
There's never a moment when we're not sending a signal.
Even when I sleep, I dream. So I think it happens all the time. Yeah.
Now, that's a fascinating concept.
Why?
Your body language.
Yeah.
Body language is like the facial, the eye.
The eyes.
Yeah. Somebody could tell you with their eyes, get lost, right?
Well, they're clues. I mean, people study this in poker. The tells. If you talk to people in the FBI, they'll talk to you about certain ways that people process.
Yeah.
Whether you look up, or whether you look to the left, or whether you look down.
Yes.
It's not foolproof, but it does tell. Our mind and our body are one, and they are communicating all the time.
There was a TV show a few years ago called Lie to Me.
Yes.
And did you see that show?
I remember the old version.
Well, people should watch that show, Lie to Me.
Right.
Because what they did was they read facial expressions and body language and eyes, and they could determine from that to help solve crimes whether or not these people were telling the truth.
Exactly.
But that's an amazing concept. The show is really good. So if you get a chance, I know I'm not supposed to plug a show, but it's old, it's gone now, but look it up. Lie to Me was the name of the show. You'll love it. Okay, males versus females. We're different.
We see the world differently.
We're different.
Yeah, we see the world
All
differently.
right, talk to me. Are females more, do the females have more aptitude to read us than males have aptitude to read them?
I think the difference in the sexes is the polarity, in the sense that a man typically is focused on an outcome, where a woman is focused on a relationship. They're more empathetic. Now, these are general situations.
I got you. It's not written in stone.
Yeah, you can find somebody that's a man that has these characteristics.
Sure, absolutely.
And I think both of us, whether it's male and female, have these, but I think we need each other, because, as a man, think about it, thousands and thousands of years ago, I would go out and I would be the hunter. I'd go out and find the kill. So I'd have to be focused on the prey, where the woman or the wife or the family member that was female had a different philosophy of nurturing and knowing if the child was sick. So I think both sexes have strengths and weaknesses. I think we process information totally different. And then we have some women that think like men, and we have some men that think like women, and it's just It is what it is.
But men are from Venus and women
the
are
book.
from Mars
Yeah,
or something? That's kind of where we're going
John
with that.
Gray.
Yeah,
John
that's
Gray.
where we're going with that.
Well, there's something interesting that a friend of mine showed me, and it has to do with a tarot card. And it has to do with a man and a female, and up above that is this consciousness, call it God. And the man is looking at the female, and the female is looking up at the sun, or God, or consciousness.
Yes, yes.
And it's this idea that the man is the self-willed part of us. The female is more in touch with the consciousness, and it's a generalization, but I think there's a balance that needs to be happening between the sexes and also between individuals, because we need them and they need us.
So I'm a part of her, and she's a part of me.
I would think so. I mean, you wouldn't be here if it wasn't for your
Absolutely,
mom, right?
absolutely.
You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I often use that. I wrote, my mother's gone now, but I wrote a poem for my mother for Mother's Day that she kind of never, ever let me forget.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember the way that it touched her. I wrote, in the miraculous womb where my life began, it was my mother's blood that made me a man.
Wow,
so,
I love that.
Yeah, so she could relate to that. I find myself often now describing myself, when I do something, I will say, that's my mother coming out of me.
Yes.
Me
too. I see it too.
I'm not ashamed to say that.
Yeah.
And it's not necessarily being emotional. I know my father, who's gone, and I know my mother.
Right.
That's dad talking.
Yes.
That's mom.
I feel the same thing in my life.
Really?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. The father's instinct, the way he perceived reality, the way my mother did. Let me ask you this question. Now you're interviewing me.
Sure.
Which one of your parents did you identify more with, and who did you want the love the most from, your mom or your dad?
I identified more with my dad.
Okay.
And I wanted more love from my
Your
mom.
mother. I knew that. I could feel that.
Yeah, I did. My family, they split when I was very young.
Okay.
I didn't have contact with my mother for a period, and then we reconnected.
Yeah.
But I'm her son.
Yep.
And I will always be her son, even though she's gone.
Right.
And my moments of life began in her.
Yeah.
And I'm here because of her.
And I think this whole idea of the battle of the sexes, I think it's just a dichotomy that just needs not to happen, because we need each other.
We do.
We do, yeah.
That's why I run into people who say, I don't need anybody. I'm okay alone. No, you're not.
Right.
No, you're lying to yourself.
We need community.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. You are lying to yourself if you say, I don't need anybody. I'm good by myself. Not true. Not true.
Well, I said in the last episode, people that connect with people,
yes,
they live longer, they're happier, they make more money, and they tend to be healthier too. And it's just connection. It's real connection.
It makes sense.
It does make sense.
It makes a whole lot of sense.
It does.
Let's talk about ethics and what you do. Is there a component there that you have to follow in dealing with people mentally or motivating people? I saw on your website you're ethical in what you do. You don't teach salespeople to be unethical.
Right.
So talk to me, how does ethics work its way into what you do?
Well, I think what it really comes down to is wanting the best for someone else, and I think that's the real key. And the other thing I say on my website is I don't claim to have any psychic powers.
Right.
And at the very end of my lecture, this is what I say. I say everything that you saw today in the last hour, none of it is fake and none of it is real. It's all a story to remind you that you hold the key to your potential. And that's how I begin the lecture, that's how I end the lecture. So I think ethical or being ethical is this idea of not lying to people and saying, I have superpowers and you don't have them, or you need to buy my course and you're going to have them too.
If you get my book, you'll be all set.
Yeah, no, I never say that. So I'm looking to empower and to fan the flame that is already inside someone. Because they have the resources already.
I read on your website there that you try to help people develop a compelling vision.
Right.
Right. What is that all about? What is a compelling vision, and why do we need it?
Nothing, like the good book says, nothing happens without a vision. I think we have to be focused, and I think in our world today, people are all fragmented, they're all over the place. So one of the disciplines that I do every single morning is I spend 14 or 15 minutes in a guided meditation. I focus on my day, I begin with the end in mind at the beginning of the day,
okay.
And at the end of the day, I write down 7 things that I'm grateful for. And at the end of the year, I have 2,555 things. I've been doing this for a decade. So every single night, I'll write down 7 things. At the end of the year, December 31st, I'll look through the book and I'll highlight the top 10 the top 100 of magical moments. Like tonight is one of them, being on your show. And I'll realize that I'm so blessed, that I'm so grateful, and that's, I think, really the key to life, to recognize that you can create your life in advance using visualization.
You can do it.
Well, I mean, a lot of people that wanted to be on Johnny Carson, they thought of themselves sitting next to Johnny. Carrie was one of them. He would imagine this every single day, every night, that he did the stand-up, and then he sat next to Johnny, and then one day it came true. So it does happen.
Well, I see Michael Jordan and athletes envision themselves with the clock running down. And they're getting the ball, and they're going to make that shot, or they're going to make that touchdown with no time left on the clock.
Exactly.
Serena talks about that in tennis, how she visualizes that she's going to go out there and be masterful today.
Exactly.
That is an amazing, the power of the mind is absolutely amazing.
It is.
We only tap how much of the brain we actually use.
I don't think a lot.
I don't think we use a lot.
No, we don't.
And we don't know how.
Well, especially when we have these patterns that we're repeating every day, 45 to 65 thoughts, 90% of them are the same. We're not really tapping our potential. And so my motivation is to really help people to realize that they have the keys, that they can do it. So that's my motivation. Something
has always interested me. Did you see the movie Carrie?
Oh my gosh, it scared me to death.
Okay, so you
Especially
know
when the hands come out at the end?
You're right, at the end,
Oh my goodness.
That's right.
Oh yeah.
You know that in the movie she can move things with her mind.
Yes.
You know, what's it called, telekinesis?
Yes.
Okay. Do we have that power, do you think?
I don't know. There are a lot of people in my field, right, that do mentalism or they do shows and they do lectures, and they're atheists. They don't believe in anything supernatural. In fact, people like Penn and Teller, who have a show in Vegas, they go out of their way to present their worldview that there is no such thing as anything supernatural.
Okay, all right.
And then you got other people that maybe are preaching and maybe giving sermons in their motivational speeches. I don't do that. But I do leave room for the supernatural. I definitely believe in the supernatural, but I'm not here or there to preach that to people. I let people make up their own mind. But if you were to pin me down and say, is it possible? I would say yes. I mean, I do believe that there's the universe as we know, and then there's something supernatural that we can't explain, the mysteries of the world,
So I'm with you. I absolutely believe that we could do things with our mind that we never dreamed that we can do.
Right.
The example of that would be the car falling on the child and the mother going out there picking up the car.
Oh, absolutely.
How does that happen?
Right.
And it did happen.
Right.
I mean, that's not fake. That's not fake anything. That really happened. That's an amazing thing.
Well, I have to share this with you, and we haven't rehearsed this, but my mom died 41 years ago on October 10th.
Okay.
And so that was a Wednesday. And Friday was the 13th, the day that we buried her. Right?
Okay.
So my whole family was out there in Connecticut, and we buried her. That night, I went to sleep, probably 7 o'clock. It was night, but I got to tell you, I was wide awake. Wide awake. I did not fall asleep. I wasn't dreaming. I wasn't hallucinating.
Yes.
And I had an experience that I can't explain. And it was supernatural. It got me to think about the world differently. And as I interview people on my show and I talk to them about different things, I find out that it's not uncommon that if you sit down and you talk to people heart to heart, some have had experiences that they can't explain. That they're like, something happened here. I don't like to talk about it much, but it's supernatural. So I do believe there is a supernatural. I do believe it.
You had an experience of your mom, or?
Well, here's what's weird. I've researched this. Most people that had experience of a dead or a loved one that passed on, they're hallucinating. It's just a hallucination because they're in so much shock. I'm lying in bed, and all of a sudden I look to the corner of the room, and I hear a noise, which sounded like, I don't know, water going through like an aqua noise. I can't explain it. Almost like a submarine noise with water. And so I looked up to the corner of the room, and I didn't see anything. And I was wide awake. I was not sleeping. I was not dreaming. And then all of a sudden I heard a voice, and the voice said, "I'm all right." Now, it wasn't my mother's voice. It wasn't her voice. I mean, I knew her a week ago. I could imagine her in my head.
Sure.
It was not her voice. It was a beautiful voice. And I literally sat up in bed and I said, I don't want to hear this. And then the voice came out again, audibly, not in my head, but out loud, I'm all right. And then I heard it a third time, and then I think I heard it a fourth time. And at that point, I got up out of my bed and walked down the hall to my father and told my dad. But I'll never forget it. That was like 41 years ago, and I can't explain it. I would think that if I hallucinated it or I made it up, I would imagine my mom, but it was not my mother's voice. It was beautiful, and it's never left me. And it, 57 years old, nothing has come close to that experience in my life.
Well, I will share with you my supernatural experience.
Okay.
My grandfather, who passed away when I was, 6 or 7 years old. I was the apple of his eye, and he was gone, and we lived in a house with a skylight.
Okay.
And I remember one day I was coming down the stairs, and I looked up into the skylight, and I could see my grandfather's face just smiling at me.
Wow.
Just smiling.
Right.
And I wasn't afraid.
Right.
It didn't terrify me,
Right.
because I knew my grandfather and I saw that face, and I know that I saw that.
Yeah.
And I went downstairs and I told my mother, and she was screaming, because she got scared.
Yeah.
But that's my supernatural experience.
Yeah.
It really did happen to me.
I believe you. I don't doubt
Yeah,
you.
it
So
really did happen
I
to me.
really
Yes.
don't know what's possible. I think there is a supernatural. I think there is a dimension that we're just not aware of. Yeah, so that's my answer.
Have you found age to be a factor in trying to motivate people? Is it easier to motivate younger people than older people?
No, not really. I think if a person has desire, no matter what age they are, I mean, I've seen young kids, 17, 15, they're on fire and they want to change the world. I've seen other people in their 50s. They wanted to do the same. So I think it depends on individuals. Nothing to do with age is what I'm saying.
So age is not a factor.
I
You
don't
think
so. I don't really think so.
Well, doesn't the brain develop more as you age, and maybe that might affect the consciousness and the subconscious more?
Well, they used to think that the brain was solid and not in a place to be malleable.
Yeah.
And now they realize in the last 10, 15, 20 years that the brain can actually be reformed. You can condition the brain. Because years ago when I was a kid, they thought, once you're past 15,
That's it.
You're done.
You're done,
But
yeah.
the brain can actually be conditioned and rewired, which is amazing.
It rewires itself.
Yeah, well, you can. It's basically on triggers. It's, there are ways to do it.
Yep.
You're not set in stone. There's always a possibility if you're willing and you have the desire and you want to face the unknown.
Oh, okay.
You know what I mean?
You're a Lutheran minister.
Yes.
What put your feet on that path?
Long story. I had this experience with my mom. I was doing magic at the time as an entertainer.
All right.
It didn't faze me. I wasn't going to join the church right away. But what happened was I was dating this girl in high school. She went to church, and her mom and dad said to me, if you're going to date our daughter, you need to go to church. So I was like 80, 81.
Okay.
And so I started going to church,
Yeah.
and then little by little, people started coming up to me, like you, with a great voice that you have.
Yes.
And they said, you'd be a great minister. And so that seed was planted in me. And then before you know it, I was going to college. And then before you know it, I was going to graduate school. And last August, I've been doing ministry for 27 years. Yeah, almost 30 years.
Do you have your own church? Or?
Yeah, I do, up in Manchester, which is north of Hartford.
Okay, and where's your church?
It's Zion Lutheran Church. It's on Cooper Avenue, 120 Cooper Street. And it's a small community, nice community, great people. And I've been with them for about a year and a half.
Wow.
Yeah.
Good grief.
Yeah.
So you're a Lutheran minister.
Yes.
So is that Martin Luther? I'm gonna guess.
Yeah.
I remember that fellow.
Yeah, he broke
tacking some theses on a do somewhere.
Yeah, like 500 years ago.
That same guy.
Yeah, that guy.
So what is it about the Lutheranism that the Lutherans that attracted you?
Well, I got to tell you, I was thinking about this today, and we haven't rehearsed these questions. When I found out about Martin Luther, I was a teenager.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And what that meant was I was rebellious, right? So when I heard the story, we're talking about stories here.
Absolutely.
When I heard of this guy face the Roman Catholic Church,
he did.
and he did all this stuff, I related to that as a rebel, and I thought I'm going to pin my story on his story. But that was like 35, 40 years ago. Things change, but that's what attracted me to the Lutherans, because this guy did what he did.
That is amazing.
You know what I mean?
Absolutely amazing.
Yeah.
Wow. Now, you've taken people on retreats.
Yes.
Now, why do you select a specific retreat, and what do you hope to accomplish by going there?
Well, I'm a big fan of Rick Steves. I don't know if you know Rick Steves.
I do, yes.
And he talks about traveling as a local
Yep.
and really traveling to expand your patterns.
He has
your
some
thinking.
great shows.
Yeah, he does.
He does, yeah.
And so when I started out 10 years ago, I've been doing this for 10 years. I started in 2009. I really wanted to help people see the world differently. But what I've realized over the last 10 years is when you take people on a group trip, they tend to stay with the same people. They stay on the bus. They eat with the same people. They don't get out and meet the locals. So my dream of making, travel transformational has been a challenge. But normally what I'll do is I'll take people to Israel, Ireland, and Italy. Those are the 3 I's.
Okay.
They're easy to go to, and I think they have the most impact on people's lives. But I've been all over Europe.
What about Israel? What do you?
I love Israel.
And what do people say who have been there on your retreats?
What do you mean? What do they say?
How the Holy Land? How they affect it?
Well,
how did it affect them?
Here's what's interesting. I could find people that want to go to Italy, because Italy's the #1 destination in the world. So it's not that hard. You could ask 25 people and they're like, I went or I want to go.
Yeah.
But when you're talking about Greece, you're talking about Ireland or London, I just got back from London.
Yeah.
How do you find those people? It's not easy. When you're talking about Israel, it's easy to find them because you're usually church people. They want to go to the Holy Land. They want to walk in the footsteps of Jesus. So, from a marketing point of view, it's a lot easier. And transformational, they'll never be the same because if they're church folks, they're hearing the message of Christmas, Easter, during the readings in the liturgy, and so all of that is coming back to them, and they're saying things like, oh, I was at the Jordan River, I was in Nazareth, I was in Galilee, I was in Jerusalem. Now they have an experience that goes with them for the rest of their lives.
If you travel and you learn the world, courtesy of Uncle Sam, I was overseas for a couple of years.
Oh, good.
Yeah, and in a military uniform.
Yeah.
So I had the privilege of traveling, and my whole worldview changed.
Yes.
Because of the things that I saw.
Yes.
I've always been a lover of history. That's still true.
Yeah, that's
I was fascinated that I was walking on streets that were 10 times as old as my country.
Yeah.
It's just quite amazing.
Yeah, it is.
My dream still is to get to Africa.
Okay.
To go to the motherland and actually stand and gaze at the pyramids. Just look at them.
Yeah,
that's
I
all I
haven't
want
been
to
there
do.
yet.
Yeah, that's
I've
what
been
that's
close,
really.
but yeah.
Yeah, that's really what I want to do. Another fascinating thing about you is you were a magician.
Yes.
How did that happen?
It was simple. I was at my grandmother's house. I was raised by a big family of Italians, and I know I don't look Italian, but my mom was Italian.
Yeah.
My uncle was in show business, and so was his wife, and he took a quarter like this, and he went like this, and it was gone.
Yeah.
And I was like in 4th grade, and I thought, how in the world?
Did he do that?
Then he showed it to me. And then that year I got a magic kit for Christmas. And from 4th grade all the way to 1980, 81, my whole life was focused on magic. And the highlight of my career is I got to work backstage for the Doug Henning Magic Show as a prop assistant. It was wonderful.
Yeah. So that's how it's done. Do
Well,
you do magic anymore? Or?
I don't really. I mean, I have an interest in it, but what I really love is the philosophy behind magic. So I'm not a performer. I'm not a magician. I don't do shows for kids. I don't do stage shows, magic shows. But what I've taken from the whole experience is the philosophy and how a person perceives reality and how easy it is to get fooled or misdirected. It's so easy.
Wow. Well, that's a wonderful way for us to close down this particular part 2 of the show. Listen, this is my man, Greg Dwyer. I hope you've enjoyed this show as much as I have taping it with Greg. That's all the time we have for What's Your Story tonight. Everybody has a story. What's yours? Until next time, I'm James Ransom Reed, Jr. Good night.